North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What is this broadcast all about? We report the news, the real news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That's not the news, just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And so, share it. Your opinion, I mean. Join us on the chat room at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you're watching on Rumble and Patreon, this show was broadcast earlier today, and you're watching a video. You can, however, call me at 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. If nobody answers the phone, just leave a message. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. I want to thank you very much for joining us. I'm still a little hashy because I have COVID-19. If you're new to the broadcast, I decided that when the government said that everybody simply must get the shots, I went ahead and did so. Got 2 shots, got a booster, then came down with COVID, like millions of other people. And now I've got it again. So I don't know exactly what those vaccinations and that booster were supposed to do, but they didn't do it. But I know exactly what the story is because I've lived it. And you'll find that that's what we do here on the Wells Report. We take this show pretty seriously. We want to make sure you have facts to make great decisions on. And that's what we do. Big news on national security today. USA Today reports Massachusetts Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira is suspected of leaking all those classified documents about the war in Ukraine. He's going to make his first court appearance in Boston today. He was arrested yesterday without incident. That should be going on even as we speak. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced the arrest of Teixeira in a brief news conference yesterday, saying FBI agents took Teixeira into custody earlier this afternoon without any incidents. He is charged with the alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. He will have an initial appearance in the U.S. District Court today. He is an enlisted airman, first class. He's the member of the 102nd Intelligence Wing based in Cape Cod. He is also the leader of an online chat group that has shared an interest in guns and racist memes. Okay. What time is the hearing? It is suspected to take place or expected to take place at 10 this morning. In other words, now. It will be presided over by David H. Hennessy. He is a federal magistrate for the First U.S. District Court of the District of Massachusetts. Hennessy was first appointed as a U.S. magistrate in 2013, served as chief magistrate of Massachusetts from 2017 to 2020, according to the court's website. He's also served as chief of the Worcester Brand in the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's branch. So Teixeira, who was arrested yesterday, charged with the Pentagon leak case, is an airman first class who joined the National Guard in September of 2019. Let's go to the telephones here and see who is paying attention. Greetings and welcome to the Wells Report. Hello, who's this? Hello? Kirk 2 Enterprise. Okay, thanks. All right, so somebody called, and you can too, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. So he joined the Air National Guard September of 2019, this according to the U.S. Air Force. He works for the Massachusetts Air National Guard at Otis Air National Guard Base. His job title is Cyber Transport Systems Journeyman, whatever that is. He's been decorated with an Air Force Achievement Medal. FBI agents took him into custody yesterday afternoon without incident, said A.G. Garland, as we talked about. Teixeira oversaw a private Discord channel called Thug Shaker Central, this according to multiple reports. The private chat group was comprised of about 20 to 30 people, mostly young men and teens. Stringent guidelines in place exist to protect classified information, and those guidelines are under review. Everybody with a security clearance signs a non-disclosure agreement. He's in trouble. He is in huge trouble here, if this is all true, and there's no reason to believe it isn't. The leak was a deliberate criminal act. Yeah. The leaked documents appear to be highly sensitive reports tied to the war effort in Ukraine, including data on military activities like U.S. drone spy planes in the area and Ukrainian forces' use of ammunition. They appear to show how the U.S. views Ukrainian forces' training and state of readiness, plus the number of Ukrainian and Russian troops killed and equipment destroyed in the ongoing conflict. Here's the situation: you simply cannot divulge classified information. You can't do it. If you have a security clearance, not only have you gone through a rigorous background check, and it's rigorous, I've gone through one myself. They want to know everybody you know, and they speak to them. And what ended up happening is that you are not just given an opportunity to deal with some of the nation's secrets. It is also an extension of trust from the government of the United States to you. Your personal politics may disagree with what the government is up to. I know mine do. But in an official capacity, somebody with a security clearance in the United States military, you simply cannot violate that trust. Because as everyone knows, or at least the people outside of Washington, D.C. know, the government of the United States is us, we the people. When the government trusts you, it's all of us trusting you. And while your politics may not necessarily agree with the ideologies of the day, you simply can't violate that trust, whether you agree with it or not. There are a lot of people that I know, okay, I'm one of them, that happens to believe the government of the United States uses national security as a convenient excuse to keep the people of the United States in the dark. I disagree vehemently with that idea, but on the other hand, I don't have a complete view of what's going on. There are a lot of different things when it comes to classified information. There's the information itself. There's how it's gathered. There are implications that can be drawn about this information, where it came from in Ukraine or Russia or both. And people can start chasing that down. It's called counter-espionage. People can start chasing that stuff down. And the people responsible for leaking secrets to the United States from other countries end up being taken into custody, in most cases, are shot or worse. And so that sources and methods thing is important, as is the information. But that being said, putting yourself, your politics, your ideologies, your beliefs, whatever, in front of the business of the United States is something that you should go to jail and suffer for. That is just something that can't happen. Strangely, I have been exposed to highly classified information. As a matter of fact, I've never talked about it, and I never will. Because you know why? It's none of my business. It's absolutely none of my business. It's the people's business. And that's the idea and the ideology that you have to take with you when you have one of these jobs. Now, why this guy decided to do what he did, no one knows. No one knows, at least yet. But Mr. Teixeira has violated a public trust. If these charges are true, I'm not fond of putting somebody on trial in the Wells Report Court of Justice and just sit there and say, well, he's gone. No, that's not true. No, there's going to be a trial, and we'll see what he's doing. But what also bothers me in this is something that we're going to spend a little bit of time on today. And that is, it's interesting when classified information is leaked by some people versus classified information being leaked by other people. And this duality, this hypocrisy, is closing in on the United States of America. And it's going to hurt us badly if we don't get it under control. One of the things that the Wells Report does is, as I said, report the news. Is it news that's, far flung and so on and so forth? And my goodness gracious, you have all these wonderful sources around the world? No, I have the same sources you do. Perhaps the difference between what I do and what you do is in the analysis. And I spend a lot of time on that. But the information that I have is the information that you have. And that information is factual or not. We point that out on this broadcast. You need to have real facts to deal with. I fortunately have the opportunity to be able to actually ascertain those facts. And that's what I report on this broadcast. And you wouldn't be here, by the way, if you didn't realize that there was value in it. And why do you realize there's value in it? Because our mainstream media is nothing more than a public relations agency for the American political left. Yesterday, I was talking about the bias surrounding Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. I was talking a little bit about the media bias surrounding him. And I pointed out USA Today, a long-standing critic of Donald Trump. And I pointed out that in their, quote, journalism, unquote, which is not the case, by the way. I'm being sarcastic. I absolutely just don't believe that American journalism has gotten so awful that you literally don't believe anything anyone says. Anyway, so I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, USA Today is that kind of newspaper. It's just what they do. But then I also turned over to Fox News. And I looked at Fox News, which is now a network trying to wedge the Republican Party and Republican voters away from Donald Trump. The interesting thing about biases is that the reason there is bias is because people truly believe that their biases aren't biases. They truly believe they're reporting the truth. Well, maybe I'm just not that arch, or maybe I'm just not that ulterior. But what I don't do is I don't let my ideologies get in the way of the facts. And this bias and this duality. So Teixeira is not just somebody who spills classified information, but he's some guy who takes part in some right-wing spillage of information, and therefore he is racist. And that's what USA Today reports. Do we know that? No. Do we take USA Today's word for it? Yes. Has that proven to be accurate over the years? No, again. It's not that I'm trying to do an advertisement for the Wells Report. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell you just how dangerous this strange media hypocrisy is. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Jack Teixeira is a 21-year-old Air National Guardsman. He is accused of leaking classified intelligence documents online. He is in a Boston federal courtroom as we speak. He seemed to have known he was in trouble. He spoke to the people in his chat group. He said, guys, it's been good. I love you all. I never wanted it to get like this. I prayed to God this would never happen, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. Only God can decide what happens from now on. Details of the leaked Pentagon documents were reported last week by the Washington Post, which obtained dozens of what appeared to be photographs showing classified intelligence briefings detailing Ukraine's combat abilities. President Biden said nothing leaked was of great consequence, but White House National Security spokesman John Kirby warned, we don't know what else this individual or other individuals may have or might still release. You've got highly classified, highly sensitive classified information now in the public domain. That's simply unacceptable and could be damaging to our national security. The FBI began surveilling Teixeira in connection with the leaks before Thursday, but were forced to accelerate their plan to arrest him after the New York Times identified him Thursday morning. The report named Teixeira as the leader of a Discord group called Thug Shaker Central, consisting of roughly 20 to 30 young men. Discord is an instant messaging social media platform popular with gamers. Members of Thug Shaker Central reportedly bonded during the pandemic by playing video games together, sharing memes, and discussing guns. Group members who spoke to the New York Times said Teixeira began posting classified documents in October, including detailed battle maps from the war in Ukraine labeled Top Secrets. Between October and March, he reportedly posted about 350 documents to the group. His motivation appears to wanting to inform and impress his online friends. So, what are they going to do with him? What are they going to do with this guy? Remember that duality I was talking about? Remember the hypocrisy I was talking about? Well, okay, here we go. Sorry, I've got COVID. Grr. Anyway, what are they going to do with him? A former Secretary of State had possession of classified documents. Did she publish them in an online Discord group? No. But were they available to every intelligence service around the world who wanted to go into her clandestine server? Yeah. Donald Trump had classified information. It was under lock and key and guarded by the Secret Service, but that blew up and continues to blow up as we speak. Joe Biden had classified information from his days in the Senate, days as vice president, days as president, guarded by his 66 Corvette. The garage door was locked, however. Sure it was. That being said, what are they going to do with this guy? There have been other United States military guys that have made mistakes. There was a submariner who ended up being in a situation where he took pictures of his workspace. They left his camera to go to his computer. Nobody ever saw them. He's in jail as we speak. But once again, there's supposed to be equal protection under the law. Why isn't there? You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. And regardless of what it says on the Chiron underneath me, it is actually Friday, last day of the work week. It's the 14th. I'll fix that here in a minute. We're giving you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point that out. We'll be back to do more of that coming up in just a couple of seconds as we continue. Thanks for joining us on the Wells Report. North to south, coast to coast, and around the world, this is the Wells Report. We report the news, we analyze it for fact and bias, we make commentary, and we debate. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. The southern border of the United States, by political design, is wide open. It has been so for decades. People who live a much more difficult life in their home countries than even the poorest of the poor here in the United States migrate here, mostly illegally, to try to improve themselves, try to give themselves a better life for not just themselves, their family, their children. They are exploited by people who are using this opportunity to smuggle contraband into the United States of America. Both fentanyl, other drugs, terrorists, any number of things can be inserted into the United States of America through this wide open border. The political calculus seems to be that a re-demographying movement to change the demographics, Jesus. I've always screwed this up, and every time I try to screw it, and I make sure whenever I do this, I sit back and I go, okay, it's you're trying to describe the various racial makeup and backgrounds of people coming to the United States. And I screw it up. I screwed it up once, and I got so terribly embarrassed by it that I keep screwing it up now. Demography. And now I'm not even sure that that's the right word, so I'm just going to change. I'm just going to change it. They're trying to change the United States into a different racial background. They believe, for example, that the aggrievement of various races in the United States can be played against other races in the United States for political effect, and of course they're correct. And this idea to change the American population to better benefit a political pursuit is changing the nation. Changing the nation. There's some 30 million people that are here in the United States illegally, at least. We don't actually know the right numbers because our immigration system is so far out of control. And there are two political parties responsible for it, not just one. At least the one that openly supports illegal immigration is honest about it. The other political party that says, my gosh, this is the most awful thing ever, but yet never does anything about it, they're ulterior. It's hard to determine demographics. Thank you, Mike. It's hard to determine which of these two parties is worse. The one that's blatantly honest with their anti-American activity, or the one that's ulterior with their anti-American activity. I'll let you decide which parties I'm discussing for yourself. But these people are flesh and bone. They're trying to improve themselves. And they die in the effort. Two sets of cell blocks went up in flames in Juarez, Mexico. Flames lapped through cream-colored bars of the men's holding cell in a federal migration center. An immigration agent named Gloria handed off the keys to the women's cell to a private security guard named Angelica. Smoke engulfed the area. The men's and women's cells were roughly 55 yards apart. Angelica believed she could run faster than Gloria. She grabbed the keys, opened the cell door, and let 15 detained migrant females out. This, by the way, from USA Today. 68 men from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador were still behind a cell door locked with a chain and a padlock. The senorita opened our cell, said a migrant woman, according to a deposition quoted in a Mexican federal court in Juarez by a defense attorney. The guard let us all out, but they couldn't find the keys to the men's cell. Nobody knew where they were. Within an hour, more than 36 of the migrant men would die of burns and smoke inhalation. 26 more would be injured in a tragedy that has rocked Mexico and its southern neighbors and raised calls for justice all the way to the highest levels of the Mexican government. 2 weeks after the deadly fire, Mexican federal investigators interviewed dozens of victims, eyewitnesses, immigration personnel, and contractors. There are 2 questions. What led to the deaths of 40 migrants? Who left them to die? The answer is circumstances. Killed those people, maimed those people. Circumstances. It's not the first time. In 2003, sheriff's deputies discovered the bodies of 17 migrants, including a 7-year-old boy, in an overheated trailer truck in Victoria, Texas. Officials located the trailer at a truck stop, found the migrants trapped inside, had attempted to punch out air holes so they could breathe. In 2012, a Ford pickup truck carrying more than 20 undocumented migrants struck 2 trees and killed 15. 10 men died in San Antonio in 2017 after riding in a tractor trailer packed with as many as 200 migrants. Nearly 30 more were hospitalized. For hours, the people in the trailer did not have water, fresh air, or food. The driver was sentenced to life in prison. An SUV packed with undocumented migrants crashed in rural South Texas in 2019 after being chased by police. 6 died. The vehicle veered into a ditch in rainy weather. In March of 2021, 13 people were killed in a remote stretch of Southern California when a crammed Ford Expedition drove into the path of a tractor trailer. Last August, 10 people died, 20 others injured when a van crashed in South Texas. There are an awful lot of people that want to change the demographics of the United States of America. There are a lot of deaths involved in it. It's just a matter of time before there are even more horrific stories that will play out before our news media. A news media seemingly incapable of connecting the actual event with the realities that caused it. Now, the problem with all that is that level of willful editing, if you want to call it that, plays into what is also known as propaganda. You see, no one has actually reported, except, of course, yours truly on this broadcast. No one has reported that the people responsible for these deaths aren't necessarily the jailer in Juarez or the driver of the van or this or that or whatever. The architects of all of this live inside a beltway in Washington, D.C. They are people who believe that they can import these people into the United States, not to do work that Americans can't do or won't do, but to cast votes that Americans won't cast. That's what they believe. Another party, by the way, and once again, I'll let you decide which one I'm talking about, realizes that those people come to the United States and they don't want to vote for the same kind of people that cause them to take their lives in their hands, the lives of their spouses and children, and cross endless deserts to be attacked and subjugated by cartels, federal government workers of many different countries, to come to the United States because it's possible. These people don't connect the fact that on that way here, horrible and terrible things that can happen to them. They can die. They can be maimed forever. And nobody tells that story. Except me. The people responsible for this, I don't know how they solace themselves. I don't know how they actually rationalize in their own minds that their politics are deadly. I guess they say, well, I didn't do it on purpose, therefore I'm absent any kind of guilt. Oh, really? Would these people be attempting to come to the United States if there were easily understood laws and practices in effect? In order to come to the United States, you have to have a sponsor in the United States who's responsible for your finances and for you following the laws of the United States of America. You have to have a job here. You have to have a way of making a living, and moreover, you have to be able to contribute something to the United States. We don't have those rules in effect any longer. We've linked deporting people that don't qualify for life in the United States with racism. Therefore, these same politicians that live on the whims of public relations are afraid to point out, well, yeah, it's not racist at all. It's just the fact that this person isn't qualified. And nobody wants to stand up for the fact that someone who cannot contribute to the United States beyond basic entry-level positions can be indeed returned to their home country. The grotesque manipulation of asylum law is the latest way that people find their way into the United States. The incompetence of the federal government to be able to get these people in front of a judge to adjudicate just exactly what their true status is and whether they should stay or whether they should go. That abject incompetence is killing people. And it's not just human smuggling. It's not just human trafficking, the sex trade. It's drugs. Over 300 Americans die every day from fentanyl poisoning. And the border remains open. Every day. That's a 9/11 death toll every 10 days. We went to war against two countries for the loss of 3,000 Americans and two buildings in Manhattan. Why aren't we doing something majestic against those people that are responsible for killing 300 Americans every day? Well, because we've got to re-demography. We've got to change the demographics of America. And all of that is worth it? The loss of over 300 Americans every day is worth it? Seriously? You know, I came up with the understanding that there are only 4 reasons why the border of the United States is open. 1, because the people responsible for closing it are either partakers of or supporters of the human sex trade. They are partakers of or supporters of the illegal drug trade. They wish the country ill by importing terrorists. Or they are on a cartel payroll. Those are the only reasons. Why are they allowed to stand? Why are they allowed to remain in positions of power in the United States when they are truly killing people? The people trying to come to the United States to live. The people who live into the United States and can't tell the difference between an Adderall and a fentanyl poisonous pill. Why are these people still there? I know why. And it's a lot closer to you than you might think. I'll talk about it when we come back. You're listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I sincerely appreciate your participation in this broadcast, and we'll continue it next. This is The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. They're trying to make us into Venezuela, but not allowing anybody to harvest the oil, says Mike. Tell me again how terrible it is to be here in the United States, this racist country that apparently is drawing people who want to be castigated by racists hand over fist. I mean, you ask anybody in power in the United States, just exactly at least some people in power in the United States, they'll tell you what a terrible country this is. Systemic racism, this, and horrifying white supremacy, that. Have you noticed that the very latest group of people that are aggrieved because of this racism or discrimination, The Latinos around the world are doing their absolute dead level best to get here as quickly as they can. Why? Yeah. Ann points out that this is not about laws, it's about enforcement. Yeah. Yeah, it is. There are three parts of the American government. There is the legislative branch, which makes law. There's the executive branch, which carries out the law. There is the judicial branch, which provides redress and interpretation of law. The executive branch has the enforcement capability, and for some reason, they believe that the laws passed by the legislative branch are simple playthings for politicians in their midst. Don't ask me why the judicial branch is not able to, in most cases, be able to interpret these laws as pure hokum in some cases. I don't understand why the courts of the United States can be also political playthings. But the point of all this discussion is that politics is killing people in this nation every single day, and it's because of the people who are there. And I'm not just talking about the evil leftists. I'm talking about the perhaps even more evil rightists who allow the leftists to ride unchecked through the United States of America. The point of the matter is that everyone at some level in American government is wrong. Which takes us back to responsibility. The Constitution of the United States is, or of right ought to be, inviolable. That's why it's called a Constitution. But it's not. It's not inviolable. Politicians, for whatever reason, believe that, once again, its very careful structure is nothing more than a puzzle to be solved to create political advantage. And I suppose that there's some of that is reasonably okay. It's okay for a congressman, for example, to toss a new public park in one of the cities in his district in a bill that isn't really especially that expensive in the first place. Although, is there anything that isn't too expensive in a country that has $33 trillion of national debt? But let's move on. When you're talking about leaving the entire border of the United States open, it's one of the only things that's actually enumerated in the Constitution that you'll have secure borders. And we do not. But like I said, in some cases, I suppose that's a small deal here or there is not that big a deal. But I draw the line when people start dying. 300 people, 300 Americans dying of fentanyl poisoning every day. People dying on the border of the United States every single day. People raped, used, turned into drug mules, bought and sold like toys every single day. And what's it going to take? It's going to take the people responsible. We, the people. It's going to take us changing everything. I know when somebody tries to run against an established politician in the United States, you find out that the neighbor that you've always loved for years and years and years was actually an axe murderer in Walla Walla, Washington, 58,220 years ago, and you didn't know it. Of course, it's not true, but would you vote for an axe murderer, especially one that's that old? It doesn't have to work for all time. The person can clear their name. It just has to work for the next election cycle. We better stop it. We better start ignoring those people and all those charges and so on and so forth and look to ourselves. Elect ourselves, not politicians, or we're going to lose this country. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in a moment. Guys, thanks very much for being with us today. Still feeling a little under the weather, but I'm hopefully getting over it. I'll talk to you later. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news fairly, truthfully. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, but that's not news. That's just my opinion and just as valuable as yours. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. It's the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thank you for your gift of listening. I appreciate it. People are smart. People are calculating. People are devious, especially devious ones. And what they do is they come up with unique ways of creating advantage. And it's pervasive throughout human history. There's a common use of a concept by leftists to wedge otherwise reasonable people into beliefs or ideologies that suit nothing more than a political endeavor. As we discussed last hour, those ideologies kill people on a regular basis. Socialism, for example, has killed hundreds of millions of people. Leftist politics is, as time goes by, more and more clear. In the United States, for example, leftists have emboldened themselves so much that they get away with it continually. One of the concepts is accusing your enemies of what you yourself are doing. Where did that come from? Well, most recently, it came from a book called Mein Kampf, My Struggle, by a guy named Adolf Hitler. Goebbels, who was the propaganda minister of the Third Reich, was brilliant by saying, my goodness gracious, all of these people are accusing us, Germany, of what they themselves are doing. The deviousness is that the Germans were doing it the entire time anyway. But what they did was they sought to blame their horrors on others, accusing them of the horrors they were actually committing. It's not just Hitlerian, it's not just Nazism, it's leftism. We have another story of that unfolding right in front of us. And because of this emboldened ideology, emboldened by a corrupt mainstream media, in most cases, we have headlines like this. John Fritzy writes for USA Today, GOP billionaire Harlan Crow purchased property from Justice Clarence Thomas. My goodness gracious, these people, friends for decades, have actually spent time with each other. Now the latest is, my God, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is somehow corrupt and somehow terrible by virtue of gifts, trips, what have you, extended to him by friends of his. Clarence Thomas, being on the wrong side of the political spectrum, obviously, is therefore guilty. And so, GOP billionaire Harlan Crow purchased property from Justice Clarence Thomas, responsible for taking him on vacations, making his life better. Another interesting thing about leftism is You have something I want. And therefore, in order to get it, we are going to make you equal. Egalitarianism. Everybody has to be the same except for the people that are successful in imposing egalitarianism on everyone who are more than equal. But by virtue of their inability to create this for themselves, they accuse others of creating it for themselves in some corrupt way. Now, this is happening mainly because of politics. What politics? Well, the Republican Party is seeking to chase down what some have called the Biden crime family. CNN reports as follows: for years, Joe Biden has sought to assure the American public he deserves their trust. I give you my word as a Biden. The president's brothers have invoked it in their private business pursuits over the years to suggest access to power and influence, which is illegal. A year after the president was elected, President Biden, his younger brother Frank boasted in a speech to medical professionals gathered in Boston of the bully pulpit he was afforded due to my brother Joey, vowed to keep attendees an opportunity to get federal dollars. 3 months ago, Frank Biden was invited as a keynote speaker at a medical conference in Venice, Italy. He gave advice to a group lobbying the federal government, a trip that he did not pay for, and a trip that he declined to say who did pay for it. President Biden's son, Hunter, bluntly acknowledged in a memoir that his last name was a coveted credential, helping him land lucrative and controversial gigs as board members for Ukrainian energy companies, friends of Chinese political figures, and on and on. By the way, this is being reported by CNN, which is a biased left journalism institution. The company that he dealt with in Ukraine, Burisma, considered my last name gold, said Hunter Biden, and that gold changed hands. Now, normally, this kind of thing would be chased down and it would be prosecuted as was appropriate. But that doesn't happen. Has not happened. In fact, anybody who says this should happen are obviously simply trying to besmirch the Biden family name. And so, at some point in the past, typically it was the last election, in fact, other people came to power and vowed to chase this down, and they are indeed doing so and indeed suffering the lash for it, as probably is understandable based on the fact that politicians chew on each other. But then there is the next stage of that, where we get back to accuse your enemies of what you yourself are doing. The deviousness of leftist propagandism. And so, where the Biden family has essentially, according to reports in the news, grafted millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, the national newspaper, USA Today, is now saying, my God, a GOP mega donor purchased 3 Georgia properties from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas of his family in 2014, a transaction that Thomas failed to note in his annual disclosure forms, according to a report yesterday. The purchase by Texas billionaire Harlan Crow was reported by ProPublica. It marks the second time in many weeks that Thomas has come under scrutiny for his ties to Harlan Crow, who is an amazingly successful developer, among other things. Thomas and his wife have accepted luxury trips for years, paid for by Crow, including international travel on private jets and yachts, according to ProPublica. By the way, ProPublica is a 501c3. Why does that matter? Well, because during the Obama administration, conservative 501c3s were either inhibited, obstructed, or essentially run out of business by the IRS simply because they were conservative in nature. ProPublica, couching itself as the ultimate arbiter of truth, is now talking about how the evil Justice Clarence Thomas and members of his family are profiting in some way that is clearly corrupt because of why? Well, because obviously, if Clarence Thomas is doing it and he's a Supreme Court justice, it's obviously not that big a deal that the Biden family are doing it. It's not a matter of degrees. All things are equal. Uh-huh. Well, then how come we don't see USA Today reporting on the Biden family and the millions, yet we do see Justice Clarence Thomas being run to earth over hundreds of thousands of dollars? ProPublica reported that a company owned by Crow spent $133,363 to purchase property in Savannah owned by Thomas, his mother, and the family of Thomas's late brother. The company then began to work on tens of thousands of dollars of renovations on a home in which the justice's mother was still living. Thomas did not disclose the transaction, according to ProPublica, despite a federal law that requires officials to make note of real estate sales in excess of $1,000. Current law in the United States says that anybody making a financial transaction of $600 or more will be reported to the government of the United States. Except that the Biden family has suspicious incident reports being reported by the American banking system that number in the thousands. And nobody knows. In fact, anybody that's asking for them can't get a hold of them at all, even those people in government. And so this goes on and on and on about the evils of Clarence Thomas. The implications are obvious. The left realizes that the judicial branch of government is in their way. And so they have to denigrate the judicial branch of Congress or judicial branch of the American government in order to get the judicial branch out of their way. There's more. It's coming up in just a couple of moments. You're watching The Wells Report. Back in a moment. So what ended up happening is I hit the wrong little filler, apparently. So we have an extra bit of time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to read some of your responses. Too many bridges to nowhere and parks never built into the deficit. 58,000 years ago. Yes, I said that. Let's see. Lois Lerner. Correct. Lois Lerner was a terrible human being and used the IRS to inhibit political dissent. It's pretty ugly, actually. It's really terrible and should not stand. But I don't know why it does. I simply don't understand why we are dealing with any of this. I do. Let's see. Let me see what I got here. Only listening to react on to understand, not to understand. Okay. Let's see here. I appreciate all you guys being here. I know it was a long couple of months. It was for me. But you'll notice that the new computer is working brilliantly and fantastically. I'm very happy about it. Let's see. Lois Lerner, wasn't she allowed to retire? Yeah. So she got her federal pension. I suppose that's okay. It's good to be back, Mike. It truly is. I appreciate you. Appreciate your support. And we do have to do that dinner. We haven't blown that off, but it's going to be a while. I have COVID. Hopefully, I'll be able to launch this in a minute. It's also been an incredibly busy time for Wells Report. Their Texas State Guard stuff. So. Let's see. It stands because Lerner was following orders from Obama. Yeah. President Obama turned everything in the United States government into a political tool. Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. See what we got here. What are we doing? All right, here we go. About 15 seconds. Stand by. I'm going to edit all this out later because I can. This is interesting. Why are we having trouble here? Okay. That's why. Let me do this. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We're having a little technical thing. The new computer got some bad information from some moron who tried to program it. I did that. Yeah. So I got to go back to... Yeah, I got to go back to this and fix it here in just a couple of seconds. I'll do that after the show. I didn't notice this. There are a lot of little checklists that you got to run to keep this thing going, and stuff. So what I'm going to do here, you know what? Shoot. Let's see here. You know, one of the annoying things about all this is that I'm going to have to. Well, wait a minute. Let's see. Let's go back to RD AirPlay. I'm going to have to fix this. Will you excuse me for just a moment while I do this? I'm going to fix this just for a moment here. Let me do this. Let's see what we got here. So is that's 9 o'clock. So that should work. No. 21. No, we're screwed. Let's see. Let's try that. Yeah, so something got mangled here, and I don't know exactly why. but it sort of kind of did. And I went through this pretty carefully, but for some reason I managed to screw something up here. But theoretically, we should be okay in a minute. But maybe not. See where we are here. We're right in the middle of a couple of different segments, so this is all screwed up. So you'll have to forgive me. But let's see. Wonder what else is going to happen. Wonder what else is going to happen here. Because this is supposed to take me out there. And I'm not supposed to be back for 5 more minutes. And I'm trying to figure out why that is. Let's see what my computer says. Yeah, I have to figure this out. Okay. All right. So maybe we're okay. Let me see what I got. Well, let's find out. Anyway, so we've been talking about Clarence Thomas, who is being sundered by the American leftist media for deals made with Republican friends. And you have to remember a couple of different things. First of all, Clarence Thomas is a Supreme Court jurist. He's very good at what he does. So good, in fact, that when they tried to slaughter his reputation to keep him from becoming a Supreme Court justice, the left failed. The incomprehensible gibberish thrown at Clarence Thomas by Joe Biden during the hearings was indeed best characterized by the justice himself, who called it a high-tech lynching. Well, apparently that party is still out there, and they still have rope, and they still have the will to continue that ignoble enterprise. And the reason is because, well, they're trying to mask the fact that the President of the United States is under investigation, his sons, his family, for what is nothing more than political graft. It appears to be nothing more than political graft. This is also spilling over on President Trump, who is currently engaged in all manner of silly things being foisted against him by local city district attorneys. Something that was clearly inhibited by the framers of this nation in the Constitution of the United States. They knew that politics at one point would be the poison that would attempt to bring down people who disagreed politically with the voters of the United States who put those people in office. And so they made it very, very difficult to prosecute a president, yet they seem to be willing to try to do it. Meanwhile, it's well beyond smoke. There are currently visible flames involved in the corruption of the Biden family, and yet nobody is moving except for Republicans who are being castigated for being horribly partisan. This in light of the left being horribly partisan against President Trump. The point of all of this comes down to this. The point of all of this is the abject horror that we deal with regards to selective prosecution of political enemies. And it is truly horrible in virtually every possible respect that we find ourselves watching all of this unfold. It's terrible. So, what we have this evil Alice in Wonderland political absurdity being played out in front of us every single day. The lubricant of all of it. What? The lubricant of all of it is the mainstream media. What do you mean, Doug? A fine pile of Republican BS. I wonder what he's talking about. I wonder if he knows what he's talking about. I don't know. Doug, why don't you tell me what you mean? As a matter of fact, why don't you call me? Here's the number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I'd like to hear what you have to say, minus the swear words. So if you can keep yourself from being profane, I'd really like to hear what you think. If you think this is BS, explain why. I want to know. But you see, what Doug apparently represents are the people that only believe half of the story, that only believe the part of all of this that apparently satisfies their need for the political aspects they agree with. Is that it, Doug? I meant exactly what I said. Well, call me on the telephone. Explain it. Are you saying that I am foisting Republican BS? Is that what you're saying? Call me. 817-379-2172. Just because I may have different politics than you doesn't mean I'm not interested in what you have to say. I'm interested in your reasoning. And I'm interested in doing it not necessarily through, your occasional dribbles on a chat room. I want to talk to you man to man. Let's go. Let's do it. Explain yourself. And the only thing that I'll say that might be negative to you is if you don't want to explain yourself, I'm in Costa Rica. It's an overseas call. Okay, call collect. 817-379-2172. And by the way, I appreciate you listening. In Costa Rica, are you an American expatriate? Do you live there? Or how did you find the show? I mean, did you go over there and take the show with you? How did you find it? Please let me know. 817-379-2172. You want to debate? I'm in Costa Rica. It's an overseas call. I'll take the charges. So by all means, do so. Where'd you find the show? That's what I want to know. How did you find the Wells Report? I know there are lots of overseas listeners, and I really appreciate all that. It means a lot to me that there are overseas listeners that would listen. And I appreciate it, but I'm always curious as to how you found it, especially when you consider the fact that you seem to disagree with virtually everything I say, which is odd, because most of the time I'm very much interested in what the other side has to say. I keep asking questions, and I'm serious about those questions. See, that's what's different about this talk show than virtually every other talk show that you've ever heard. I don't have all the answers. See, the country is so badly divided. We talked about this last hour. The country is so badly divided at this point that none of us listens to either of us. Why? I'm not concerned about disagreements. I'm not concerned about the actual disagreement. I'm interested in what the thinking is. I'm interested in the thinking behind what you're saying, Doug. 817, and by the way, the country code is 01-817-379-2172. I'll pay for the call. But it kind of bothers me that you'll say something like, oh, okay, a fine pile of Republican BS, but you won't explain why you believe it is, because this isn't Republican. This is a combination of history and current reality. This isn't even this isn't even political. I couch my terms very carefully on this broadcast. I don't say that the Biden family is actually guilty of all of this. I just point out the facts. It's the news. The Biden family stands accused of millions upon millions of dollars worth of what appears to be graft and corruption. Clarence Thomas is also accused of the very same thing. Clarence Thomas, a Supreme Court justice. And not only does that besmirch the reputation of Clarence Thomas, it also besmirches the reputation of the court. Clarence Thomas is an associate justice. He works for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. I guarantee you that the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, and Clarence Thomas have spent a great deal of time talking about this. Last week, Clarence Thomas pointed out that he had spoken with his colleagues about this regarding the actual ethical implications of all of this and said, goodness gracious, this isn't reportable because none of these people have business before the court. The other point of view that you need to be aware of, the other thing you need to be aware of is that Elena Kagan was the former solicitor for the government of the United States under the Obama administration. Why is that important? Well, as the Solicitor General, she argued against the Defense of Marriage Act. She was actually a participant in the legal argument about it. Yet, when that came before the court, she didn't recuse herself. By the way, Doug just got back. You popped up on my feed. Yes, I'm an expat. I'm neither a Republican or a Democrat. Neither am I. I'm a constitutionalist. And by the way, I believe in what Robert Bork used to say, I'm a reasonable constructionist. In other words, I'm willing to see beyond the actual verbiage of the Constitution to the intent. Up to a point. Okay? Doug, you and I are more closer together than you think. Trump proposed suspending the Constitution on his media outlet. Well, that's according to the reports. Did that actually happen? No. No, he didn't. No, it didn't. And besides, there's something else here, and you've got to agree with it. The Constitution of the United States has been left behind by the federal government by both parties. Not just Democrats, but Republicans too. What really bugs me is not just the Constitution of the United States that's been left behind by the government of the United States, but now the Bill of Rights is under attack. Well, okay. All right. So the question is, which Constitution are we talking about here? Are we talking about the Constitution as I see it? Or are we talking about the Constitution as politicians see it? See, I look at all that and I think about Donald Trump, and I've said this over and over and over again. If he wants to be the president of the United States again, he's going to have to start acting like a president instead of acting like a guy that believes a little bit too highly in what he thinks at any given moment. He's impulsive. He makes stupid statements. I remember him saying something along that line, and I remember people reacting to it. And I also remember following it up, and I found something in it that sort of made it ambiguous, at least, if not just outright wrong. But I'm not besmirching your perceptions, because as we all know, perceptions are reality. Certainly yours are. Certainly mine are. So that being said, let's get back to this. The damage here is not just to Clarence Thomas's reputation. He's crossed his T's and he's dotted his I's. He knows what the ethics are in the Supreme Court. There are ambiguities. That's why it's not all cut and dried. That's why there are legal opinions instead of legal facts, if you will. That's why when someone violates a law, there's a trial to determine whether they actually did. It happens in courtrooms from one end of the country to the other at all different levels. What's fascinating here is that the people that are foisting this on Clarence Thomas are not just damaging him, but also damaging the court. What I have noticed in my life is I have noticed that the Democrat Party, there you go, Chris Grimes has helped us out here. The Democrat Party has used the judicial branch of government, mainly through the appeals courts of the United States, to further a political agenda. It's happened so often that there's a term for it. It's called judge shopping. Yes, both sides do it. But that's not what the judicial branch is for. The judicial branch is not a political tool. The judicial branch interprets the law. That's why they're called arbiters. Chris Grimes, who is also a Democrat, said, quote, a massive fraud and magnitude of a massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Oh, okay, there you go. That's what I found. Okay, let me explain what I found, Chris. First of all, wasn't the president talking about during this? Wasn't he talking about either he was talking about the impeachments or he was talking about the Mueller investigation, wasn't he? Okay, which by the way turned out to be okay, if not a fraud, it certainly turned out to be wrong. Am I wrong on that? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Let me ask you this, Chris. Have we not seen the termination of rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution? Have we not? Oh, the claim of election fraud. Okay, you're right. You're right. It's about election fraud across the country. There are problems with this. But let's go back to what I was saying. Have we not seen the existing government? Have we not seen the existing government terminate rules? We have. We have seen them terminate regulations or enact regulations that were at cross purposes with the Constitution. Yes or no? Have we? Yes. Rules, ambiguous. Even those found in the Constitution. Have we seen the Constitution violated by this government? Yes or no? Yes or no? So here's our situation. What you keep talking about and keep ascribing to Donald Trump, again, is being done as we have this conversation by the sitting government. That's why all these executive orders. Now, please understand something. Executive orders were made something well beyond their constitutional scope by Chief Justice John Roberts. When President Trump changed an Obama-era executive order and the Supreme Court of the United States, with John Roberts writing the opinion, said, no, you can't do that. Well, what that did is suddenly we now have the president able to make law from the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. You can't do that. So I get back to my question. Have we not seen termination of rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution? By the way, it was pointed out by someone here. Oh, it was pointed out by Ann Guzman. He wasn't the president on December 3rd, 2022. It's true. He was a private citizen. But once again, while that is a loose statement, and I agree that it's a loose statement, what we have to understand is that none of that ever happened. The things I'm referring to, the circumstances I'm referring to, those things actually have happened. And the most glaring example of it we've talked about right here on this broadcast.
The most glaring example is the southern border. The government of the United States is charged by the Constitution to maintain secure borders. It is not a secure border, is it? You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I really wish people would spend more time on the telephone here, because I'd like to have these conversations instead of essentially monologuing. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I just went back in the log and figured out what happened when our music started playing at the right time. It turned out to be a one-digit typo in the midst of about 1,000 digits. Yeah, so I found it. Because I'm good at making mistakes, and I'm good at finding how I made those mistakes and then correcting them. Now, if I could just stop making mistakes. This is the Wells Report, bringing you the news, the issues of the day. One last thing before we go. There is nothing more terrible than the migraine headache of reproductive rights in the United States. The migraine headache of reproductive rights in the United States started in 1973. And it has gotten worse
and slightly better and slightly worse ever since then. We're talking 50 years now. The migraine headache of reproductive rights in the United States got another little jab of pain, another little throbbing moment yesterday. And this is a biased news article by USA Today. You can tell by the writing. Here we go. The Republican-dominated Florida legislature yesterday approved a ban on abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. This is a proposal signed into law. It was signed into law later yesterday by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis in a private ceremony as he prepares for an expected presidential run. The governor's office announced the news just after 11 p.m. A photo DeSantis posted on Twitter shows him signing the bill called the Heartbeat Protection Act. That in a private late-night ceremony in the office flanked by House and Senate sponsors and House Speaker Paul Renner. We are proud to support the life and family in the state of Florida. I applaud the legislature for passing the Heartbeat Protection Act that expands pro-life protections and provides additional resources for young mothers and families. But even with the DeSantis signature, the 6-week ban would take effect only if the Florida Supreme Court rules against the state's current 15-week ban in an ongoing legal challenge. The Florida ban would have broader implications for abortion access throughout the South. The state has served as a haven for abortion for women who live in nearby states with 6-week bans or total bans on the procedure. Now, if this is a heartbeat bill, the actual reporting on this is inaccurate. If it is a heartbeat bill, that means that when the fetus exhibits a heartbeat, abortions are illegal from that point forward, except in extremis, in extreme circumstances, plus the life of the mother. Let's see. Let me see what else I can find here. See if I can find that, because that's usually Texas has the same law. Let's see here. It's nearly identical that bans abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, et cetera, et cetera. The problem with this is it's more like 6 to 8 weeks. And this is a portion of these laws that has been reported errantly in the past. Let me tell you about what my point is in this. My point is as follows. We are fighting the wrong fight. The reason we're fighting the wrong fight is because the people that understand the true implications of all of this know that there is a simple solution. It is not the Gordian's knot of reproductive right terror that people that are trying to advocate for abortion rights attempt to make it. The laws of the government of the United States specify the circumstances in which life ends. But those laws do not specify the circumstances in which life begins. That is incompetence. It is a basic understanding. When does life begin? Not only do we not have that standard in place, we haven't even debated it. We don't know whether it's the actual moment of emergence or whether it's when the heart begins to beat or when conception occurs. We don't know. Once we know, all of this disappears. I can't be the only one that's figured this out. And so, since we don't have it figured out, guess what else we do? We never solve the problem. Why is that? Well, because politics loves problems, but hates solutions. And what needs to happen forthwith is we need a government that works on solutions.
instead of political footballsmanship. Drives me nuts. Absolutely drives me nuts. Let's see. Randy wants to know how many vaccinations I got. I got 2 vaccinations and a booster. I've gotten 3 Moderna shots and COVID twice. I'm currently dealing with it. So if I sound a little snoggy, that's exactly why. Listen, thanks very much for paying attention to and listening to and watching the Wells Report today. We'll see you again on Monday. God bless you and yours. Until then, have yourself a wonderful weekend, okay? And thanks for keeping the Wells Report on your schedule. Bye-bye. All righty. Okay. Randy, I want to talk to you for a couple of seconds here. You got blocked because you were being obnoxious and disrespectful. It wasn't because of your opinions. I don't mind your opinions, okay? Your opinions aren't the issue. Disrespect and saying things that are damaging to anybody who happened to come across the chat room, not based on the show, but based on me personally, I can't let that happen, okay? So I asked you to stop, and you didn't. And so I blocked you. Now, if that's a problem, I understand, but this is not the Randy Report, it's the Wells Report. And it's not an easy editorial decision to make. I want to hear what you have to say. But you will be respectful, not just to me, but to the people in the chat room. That's why there are people that have been blocked. Not because of their opinions, but because of their lack of manners. This after endless warnings, by the way. Okay, I'm just saying. You know. Well, let's see. Thanks very much, Ann. I appreciate the show. It had a glitch right in the middle of it because I did something. I know you're trying, Randy. Listen, I love you, dude. You're doing just fine. Okay? Just be nice. It's easy. Just be nice. Okay? And that's why I'm telling you. You know, but when you say things like you block people, well, yeah, but you leave out the context as to why. Right? So anyway, let's see what else. Jessica says, yeah, we see the spark of life at conception. Yeah, that changed it for me. But let me ask you this. Which is more important? Solving the problem of we don't know when life begins by debating and by agreeing. Which is more important? Or the continual political standoff of nobody being allowed to even have the debate to determine an opportunity for a vote? Which is more important? I would say that since we have not had a national vote, that we have not had a national debate about when life begins, I say that's calculated. And I say that that's one of the essential tools of politics. Divide the populace. And we're divided. So what's the story? What's the story? All right, this has been the Wells Report. God bless you and yours, and take good care of yourself. Like I said, have a